here we are, another episode of Shifted Ed podcast here with Learn Quebec. And we've been kind of scouring Canada looking for educators to talk about their history and kind of what is on the forefront of education nowadays and also what's in the future. And today I held no punches. I have Peter Skillen here. He was the project and curriculum lead at Code to Learn, which was funded by CanCode. We'll talk a little bit about that because things are starting to shift a bit. He is a learning and teaching expert. These two go hand in hand for Peter, and I just love his mindset. So I'm super happy to have you here, Peter. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'll try and
Yeah,
behave.
please do. Or not. So kind of just I like laying a bit of groundwork, Peter. Like when, like how did your career start as an educator? And then starting to
hmm
integrate technology. Like what were those beginning moments for you?
Well, when I was a teenager, I really loved animal behavior, and I thought I was going to end up being an ethologist, quite frankly. Um, but it turns out that I ended up going to teachers college the very last year before you had to have a degree. So I started quite young, was able to retire quite young as a result of that. Well, retire the first time. And and I realized that, animal behavior and learning, the world of learning and children and stuff like that was really something I just had been so passionate about. So I started teaching actually in 1970, and teaching elementary school. And 19, then I was doing, I did my degree, my B.Ed and that stuff, and then I was doing my master's. And the very last course in my master's, I thought of psychology, because that's what my
Mm-hmm.
interest was, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
from what you've read and all. And I thought, well, I'll take a computer course. You know, they had these computer or Commodore PET computers, and I didn't think I would because it was the era of Piaget and humanism and all that stuff, hippiedom and all. And I never thought I'd use computers, but I ended up renting a dumb terminal and taking it into my grade one class and hooking it up to my phone line in the
Well,
school library and had these grade ones programming in BASIC. Now, obviously, they weren't doing heavy duty programming, but
sure.
they were, this was an underserved neighborhood. So these kids were gathered around the computer, typing in things like print Janine 10 times. And when it worked, the celebration that they had was amazing. And so that's how I got started. And then 1980, Logo came along. Well, actually
Mm-hmm.
came to the schools. It had been around already for almost a couple of decades,
Right.
on mainframes and stuff at MIT and Bolt, Beranek, Newman. And that's where I got started with Logo. Yeah, and then there's quite a
Amazing.
history after that too of coding, which we
Right.
will probably touch on.
Absolutely. I have a question too about the play that you were alluding to. That when we start in elementary school, preschool, elementary school, there's this notion of being playful and to play.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'll ask teachers, what does play mean? And they kind of get stumped a little bit. Um, can you talk about play, tinkering, and its value in the learning process?
To me, it's kind of the essence of it all,
Hmm.
because play speaks strongly to intrinsic motivation, to that which you love and that which you desire. And you set your own problems. You control your own space within that zone of proximal development, that ZPD, right?
Right.
Which teachers are constantly apparently trying to figure out, oh, okay, well, where's that ZPD of that kid? We'll try and get in there. Well, when kids are playing, they automatically play in that space or just in a zone, just
Right.
in the state of flow as Mahai Chink said, Mahai would talk of it.
Right.
Um, and as far as tinkering goes, Brenda Sherry and I coined this term tinkery, which we kind of love because it involves tinkering and inquiry, and the two for me just go hand in hand. And coming up through that Piagetian era and getting involved in the 70s, it stuck with me. And I just think it's still the true way to go. And uh, I think if we want kids to be in charge of their own learning, then play is an essential part of that. I work with Robbie Case too at OISE, and he dealt a lot with the issue of play
Mm-hmm.
as a professor, and I learned a lot from his modeling
Right.
uh, how we should quote uh, cover the curriculum. And so it came to this understanding for me that I'm not in a job. My job isn't to deliver the curriculum. My job is to understand the curriculum as a landscape and
Mm,
help kids, play their way through that. And
right.
then, yeah, I know why schools are going to require me to check off certain things. But if I know that landscape and as kids navigate and play their way through it, I can just check things off. I don't have to sit
Mm-hmm.
down and design a lesson, to cover those things. So,
Right. Right. And Peter, how did you come to that? Like, I realized in my career I had certain tipping points where suddenly a light went off, where I kind of understood teaching and learning and its coexistence. What were those moments for you where that light went off, where it's like, I can't control what they learn, or I can't jam content down their throats and hope it sticks? Like, what were those tipping points for you when you realized that kids had to be involved in what they were going to do if they were going to learn it or not?
I struggle with this. I've
Mm,
struggled for like 50 odd years now with this question. So obviously it's a strong and powerful question. And I wonder how much has to do with someone's epistemic frame, someone's way of viewing the world as a result of their nature and nurture as a youngster growing
mm,
up versus how much you can learn in a tipping point fashion from somebody else to do that
right.
or to come to that. So, and how do you shift somebody's epistemic frame? I think
Mm,
really it involves knowing, coming to understandings outside of just that world of education
mm,
as well. And
mm-hmm.
okay, having said that, there are some people who've had an incredible impact on me. Um, First of all, those animal behaviorists back in the day,
Right.
um, because those animal behaviors were largely behaviorists. They were largely Skinnerian, um, and I liked their stuff, but it didn't always make sense to me. And so I came across Marlene Scardamiglia and Carl Bereiter at OISE, who, were coming to this notion of the intentional learning.
Right.
Um, and you having kids having intention about learning and uh, and so on. And then that didn't quite make sense to me because Carl Reiter he developed a lot of the DISTAR programs and the SRA programs, which were incredibly behaviorist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in conversations with him, he basically said, well, if kids have those skills, then those basic things automatized, then they're free to play and explore with some background. And then I looked at a centipede, and if a centipede had, in fact had to think about every foot movement, it would be tripping all over itself. So I have this mix of behaviorism and Piagetianism in my soul, I guess. And
Right.
Seymour Papert obviously had a great impact on me as well,
Right.
um, and many of Seymour's colleagues. Um, a guy I miss tremendously these days because we're in a world now that requires big thinkers like that to try and shift things along because we're in a bit of a mess, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Um, I like what you were saying too. I read this blog post that you had written about our public relations with education and learning is really horrid. That we always stay very insulated within the educational system instead of promoting the amazingness to the world, to get that support. Do you? How can we go about being better public relationists in education so that people understand the importance of what we're trying to get the kids to leave those institutions with?
That's a very difficult question too, obviously. I think the best success I ever had with that was when I was teaching grade 2, and my teaching style it wasn't as traditional as, as others in my school, because it was an open kind of classroom. It was center-based, it was activity-based, it was student-driven, it looked chaotic. And I was getting criticism from my colleagues who were saying, "Well, Peter, you can't teach that stuff. That's grade. That's grade. That's my grade. That's grade 3. You teach grade 2." And I'm the obvious pushback as well. I take kids where they're at, look into their eyes, whatever. And the principal was a little concerned because the parents were wondering, well, that's a pretty chaotic classroom. And so my belief was, yeah, it is chaotic, but in fact, I don't expect kids just to learn the curriculum at hand. I expect them to manage their learning of the curriculum at hand and have a responsibility not just for their own learning, but for the learning of others in the group as well. So I'm going to expect that there's a little chaos. So to answer your question, I actually invited parents in to the classroom, both during school and after school. So after school, what I would do is have them learn how to do something that was totally novel for them, but I would do it in an activity-based way, not a stand and lecture way. And so they came to understand the value of that. And they could then look at it in their own children, look at it in their own world and see that their kids were playing like that. And that's how they learned. And we were scaffolding that and supporting it as caregiving adults kind of thing. So that's a small microcosm of how we could do it. A macrocosm, I'm not sure. There's too many invested players who want to mess with it.
Right. Very true. Very true. And then,
and sorry, and that's worse now with the kinds of divisions that we're seeing and the polarization of thinking between liberal and conservative or whatever dichotomy that you wish. It's getting worse, and it's a real issue. Yeah.
Right. And do you think that this is going to, well, I mean, obviously it will affect the students down the road. Like, how do you see us preparing, if you could have, your words became reality? What are some strategies that are effective for making sure that kids leave as learners and are able to navigate, as you said, not only the curriculum, but also navigate then life and everything that comes at them? What are some of those strategies that you have used that are like, this works?
I think the first thing is you have to respect that every student who comes into your classroom has the right to behave in the way they choose. You don't have to like it, but you have to respect that they have that right. If they arrive late, I'm not going to send them to the office. If it's affecting their learning, I'm going to pull them aside at some point and have a conversation with them. How's that working for you? Does that work? What are your goals? If they don't complete their work, then I have to figure out why are they not completing their work. I had one student in a school. We started a school called the YMCA Academy, which was a school to serve kids who are having difficulty in regular factory high schools. And so I had this one girl, she never finished anything. And I realized, because I paid attention, that she was brilliant, but a perfectionist.
Mm.
And so that perfectionism got in her way of completing things. And so the pressure on me from colleagues was to fail her because she was
Mm.
not completing her work and so therefore did not get the mark. And all I maintained was, has she met the expectations that the Ministry of Education is required? And it didn't say that they had to finish their work.
Mm.
That wasn't one of the expectations. That's a different
Right.
bucket.
Right.
And so she was. And so she actually excelled in my class.
Mm.
And so that's a matter of respect for each individual's heart and soul and uh, characteristics. And Lord knows what's going on at home for some of these children.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so uh, that
It's a
gave
tough
them,
call sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, so that, I don't know what else to say, Chris. That was really the
Yeah.
essence of it. And I learned along with a great man there, Jim Milligan, who
Mm.
taught me an awful lot about how to take the pause. So here's another example. I ran project-based learning in that school a lot.
Mm.
And so one kid at the beginning of a course, Peter, he says, listen, enough with the project-based learning. I'm going to be a plumber in a couple of years. I'm in the apprentice program now. I'm going to be making more money than you. Can you just give me a textbook and let me work through the textbook and answer the questions at the end of it and then be done with it?
Mm.
And of course, my initial reaction inside my heart was, hey, man, I spent all weekend trying to figure out how to help this class, generate their own problems, generate their own project-based learning stuff and all that. And now you tell me this? Well, I didn't do that. I took the 10-second pause and then I thought to myself, wow, if I want kids to be in charge of their own learning, I'd better eat this. That's what I
Right.
did. I
Right.
respected his choice.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And I love that you're saying it's these relationships, right, that are the foundation of any, student teacher relationship, and that you believe in them, right? That you respect them, as you said. Um, and that's the first kernel, I think, that will spark that relationship. And if, that they trust you, and that they know
Mm-hmm.
that you have their best interest in mind at all times. Um,
Yeah,
so,
there was another young
yep.
woman there who, whenever I'm a little passionate, and occasionally my passion would override things in the
Mm,
classroom, and
mm.
she would just stop me and say, "Peter, you can't lay that on the whole class."
Right on.
I learned a lot from that young woman.
Yeah,
She was right.
absolutely. That's cool. That's really cool. And that takes a certain amount of knowing, trust that she could say those things to you and it'd be like, it's okay. I understand. I know myself. You know me a bit now, and
No,
that
she was actually
regulation.
going to say them anyway. She was that kind of kid, and that was part of her problem in the real quote in the real world. She couldn't
Right.
control that. And yet, the
Mm.
fact that I actually listened and respected her was probably a novelty to her
Right.
because she
Right.
probably got slammed up against the wall for that kind of
Right.
stuff in her past. In fact, I know she
Mm.
did. Not
Right.
physically, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one. All right. So we skip along education, the play, the fun, the tinkering. And then another tipping point happens where ed tech becomes this like sonic boom within the system itself. Government scrambling to try to, keep up. Okay, we got to. And this is where CanCode comes into play a little bit, and tell me if I'll let you explain a little bit more, but CanCode was putting funds out there for coding to get more disseminated into the system of education. Is that
Yep.
somewhat
That
accurate?
Yep, that is correct. But I'm going to go back in history a little bit because during the
Yep.
80s, coding was huge
Hmm.
in the world
Hmm.
and in North America and in Canada and in South America, Japan. It was huge,
Yeah.
along with the use of tool software. So helping kids learn how to use spreadsheets, databases, word processing effectively. idea processors, all that kind of stuff. But I actually ran the special interest group for logo computing
Mm-hmm.
in Ontario, along with other colleagues, for about 10 years through the 80s. Okay.
Wow.
But then the World Wide Web came along.
Right.
And so coding stopped.
Hmm.
Tool-based use stopped. Search the web. Let's search the web. So everybody
Hmm.
went to the web. 2005, Make Magazine starts up. Oh, coding's back. Making's back.
Hmm.
Um, because let's face it, LCSI in Montreal developed Lego Logo back in 1986. And so that
Right.
was the first Lego robotics program. It became Lego Mindstorms afterwards, based on
Mm-hmm.
Seymour's, fantastic book of 1980, Mindstorms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so it came back in 2005, like a sonic boom, like you said. And now it's in the curriculum in most areas.
Right.
Um,
And was CanCode designed to support teachers that were kind of like, ooh, I don't know computers, I don't know code. Like, was it a
yeah.
response to, or was it initiative to kind of like preemptive kind of initiative?
Well, I mean, it was after the fact
Mm-hmm.
that CanCode funding came into effect, because that was 2016, 17 that started, compared to 2005. So there's a decade in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, their focus, CanCode's focus and desire, is to increase the number of skilled workers, skilled in in technology and coding and digital skills and so forth. In
Okay.
fact, in their first instance, it was coding. And then
Right.
we had CanCode partners had conversations with CanCode, and we embedded digital skills as a broader thing.
Okay.
So it's quite a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's great. And we've been very thankful to see that kind of financing going into schools.
Right.
Having said that, when I look around still, it's really sketchy how many
Mm.
people are actually on board with
Right.
coding or digital skills.
Right.
And they got the old mindset. They have a very traditional mindset, many folks,
Mm.
um, about how to do it. Like, have you got a lesson plan for grade 4 for, I don't know, some aspect of computational thinking?
Right.
Ah, not really the shift we need. We
Right.
need a much bigger shift.
Right.
So,
And why do you
my
think
interest,
it lost those legs, though, Peter? Like what? Like because the funding was there for a while to do this, right? It wasn't for 1 year or so; it was for a handful of years.
yeah.
What do you think some of the biggest barriers were? Was it just the uncomfortableness that teachers had with bringing these kinds of practices into the classroom that they just weren't familiar with?
Um, like I said, it seems like a lot of money, but when you boil it down, I could do the division, but not that quickly. It's not going to affect every classroom, every teacher in Canada. There's no way it will.
Right. Right.
Plus, I think the solution is different. I think with that support, we still need to shift the way education is perceived
Hmm.
and proceeds. The system needs changed.
Hmm.
Uh, this whole business of having curriculum, having grade 1, grade 2 failing, the bells ringing, kids not involved in interdisciplinary stuff
Hmm.
anymore. It's just not project-based learning. Uh, you know,
Right.
AI is coming on the scene pretty hot and furiously. Um,
Sure is. Yeah.
is coding going to be dropped now in favor of helping kids learn about AI? And are we going to have AI curriculum now for grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3? I don't
Hmm.
know. We might.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
or are we just going to ban it? I mean,
Right.
there's no way
These two
that's going to
extremes. Right?
happen.
Like, yeah.
It's two extremes, but why on earth would you not
Right.
uh, have kids use AI tools? They're absolutely incredible power tools for the mind,
Right.
cognitive partners
Mm.
that can be leveraged to do awesome things and leave me uh, as an individual to do better things with that huge cognitive partner.
Right.
So, I mean,
I
it's the
love how
same
you
old
say
argument.
that.
We've had it for years and years and years. You
Mm.
know, I mean, I had one person say to me, you know, kids can't kids can't even read maps anymore. You know, they're all stuck in their GPSs. They can't read maps. Um, I, and don't get me wrong, I love maps. I love maps of all kinds. However, can't you just imagine the people when maps were invented saying, "Ha, imagine kids won't be able to learn to navigate by the stars or a sextant anymore." You know, here we
Right.
are. Keeps
Right.
coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
So
was talking about that the other day with some colleagues. Like, do you remember pre-map days, like on your phone when you had GPS?
I
And
know.
I don't remember what I used to do. Like, I must have written down like key streets or, because I still driving all over the place. But I was like, and we couldn't really recall. But it only was like what 15,
Not
maybe
that
20
long ago.
years ago.
I
Like,
know.
it's amazing how everything shifted quickly once the internet expanded so quickly.
That's right.
And I wanted
Except
to
the
ask you,
systems, except the school
yes,
systems.
that's
Other
right.
systems have,
Right.
banking systems, ones that
Right.
make money seem to shift quicker.
Hmm. That's a very good point, Peter. Very good
Power
point.
and privilege. Uh,
Yeah.
the medical system hasn't shifted as much. We
Right.
don't have medical records that are common across.
Right.
Education system. Is coding important in school? I got involved because I got involved because as I said to you, those grade ones squared their shoulders and raised their heads and uh, fell in love with it, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, it was a cognitive thing. It was a way of helping kids, think deeply, think about their thinking, sort of metacognitive stuff.
Yeah.
And that's always been my interest.
Hmm.
And not to create workers for the future. If kids
Right.
want to learn coding, they're going to learn it. Like, why start in grade one? They're going to learn it like within a few months later on, especially with AI tools.
Yeah.
Hey, how do I write a program that's recursive? Oh, what language? Python. Here's an example. Oh, thank you. Now I know. Great.
Right.
Can you make a video of that for me? Oh, thank you. It's all there right now.
Right.
Pretty good.
Oh, it's amazing.
Um, so I don't think everybody has to learn coding. I like kids to learn coding for cognitive reasons. I like kids to learn coding in case they want to generate their interest, in case they wish
Hmm.
to pursue it. I
Hmm.
like them to learn coding so they know they're being manipulated by those in power and privilege in these great big corporations.
Right.
Um, so those are other reasons I like it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. And you kind of made me think about AI too in the way that it's about asking good questions. And you alluded to this too in project-based learning that it's the good questions that you ask and then how am I going to go about. And it made me kind of think about two teachers, like I remember I did a whole course when I was going into, in my pre-service years on question asking. And I
Right.
find that that is a skill that could be, like used more because AI is all that. It just wants information. Ask me good questions and I will spit it out for you. But if I don't know how to ask good questions, I could be in trouble. Like I won't have access to it. Like,
Yep. Totally agree. Um,
hmm,
we used to teach courses on question asking, actually,
yeah,
teachers.
right, right.
Uh, Brenda, Sherry, and I did. And yeah, I've been fascinated with question asking, particularly when it comes to project-based learning, because I developed a piece of software actually with LCSI called Journal
Hmm,
Zone. It was an online collaborative scaffolded journal writing environment where kids were getting groups online, and then they decide on their project, what sort of general project area, but they'd have to
hmm,
come up with the driving question. And of course, there's all
okay,
sorts of literature on what a quote driving question is.
sure.
but they would, put in ideas about what their driving question might be, and they might take several journal pages to do that, along with uh, kids commenting and help them. Well, that's not a driving question. That's a simple question. So that kind of dialogue would happen. So I remember helping kids and teachers understand that if you're studying the solar system and the kids ask a question, which planet has the greatest number of moons? That's not really a driving question, but maybe a question like, does the mass of the planet relate to the number of moons? That's a bit more of a driving question. So they have to do some figuring out. So, and now with AI, with those generative AI tools, it's becoming more interesting because especially when kids, if we get to the point where kids are creating their own GPTs, which is a fun exercise, then they realize that you have to train this beast. It's not, it just doesn't know it all. You get to put in PDFs or other websites or whatever and let it train, and you teach it. I've been developing one just for fun for a Link's coding companion.
Fun.
Right? So because the Link's documentation is there, but it's not as accessible as it could be in a GPT. So, but it's a playful way for me to figure out how kids might now come to figure out. Well, it's a playful way for me to figure out how to help kids and other teachers use these kinds of power tools for the mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, here in Quebec, we're still, teachers can use it, but it's on the fence with students. They don't want them using generative AI. So they're going through their bureaucracy to figure out what extent. But I mean, these kids are going to be faced with this regardless if we're there or not. Teachers,
I agree. And so, we need policies. And yes, it's a big, scary world outside of the education world. I have a lot of concerns about it, from militarization, blah, blah, blah. But inside education, like, why are you stopping them? Because they'll cheat? Cheat on what? They'll have the AI thing write an essay? Yeah, they might. Well, what did you have them write the essay for? Well, I wanted them to learn how to write an essay and learn the topic. Yeah, but why don't you have them use AI to write the essay and have them go back and question it?
Fact check it. Yeah.
Fact check it. Look for inconsistencies, like all of that kind of stuff. I forget the name of the tool I used the other day, but it was it generates a video for you, like a teaching video.
Great.
So I pretended I was an 8-year-old, and I said, make me a movie about how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly for an 8-year-old. And so it writes a script, and you get a choice then of how long. 1 minute, you can use a slider. So I made it 1 minute. It writes a script, and you get to approve the script. Once you read the script, you just make a video, and it makes this little video. Incredible. Why would you not use that with kids? Why would kids not be allowed to use that stuff?
Yeah. Oh, the power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think you mentioned at one point too, it is about this power struggle that the educational system has of kind of wanting to keep the water where they fill the glasses rather than the glass already half full. And this constant struggle of who has the power. And sometimes having students have power is, I don't know, seen as, wait a minute, should we let that I don't know. It's a peculiar.
Yeah, and I have a hard time being critical of educators because they're my colleagues. I am one. Yeah. And so everybody has the best intentions. And I believe that. Every individual in the school districts and in the Ministry of Education, they have the best intentions.
Yes.
I'm just not sure that they're uh, the right. I'm not sure that they're going about things the right way, and I'm not
Right.
sure how to change the system. I'm not sure
Right.
that AI might just bring down the system. Teachers are leaving in droves.
Oh, I know.
Kids are signing up for other kinds of schooling, lots of
Yep.
homeschoolers.
Yep.
I do not want to see the public school system collapse under its own uh, inertia. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be very
Inability
sad.
to adapt,
Yeah,
and be sprite, like able to take what's going on in the world and then
yeah,
react to it rather than kind of behind the ball.
because it's not a minor change. It's not minor
Right.
adjustments that you need to make. It's a
Yeah.
radical change. I know
Yeah.
lots of educators talk about that.
Yeah.
Lots of people on the outside, let's say, talk about how we need a radical change. Well, we do. Uh,
Mm,
we
yeah.
do. But I've always thought that, even before technology,
Hmm.
because I'm a Summerhillian at heart. Like, Somerville School, A.S. Neil.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's pretty radical approach.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just hope the best for our children, grandchildren, and our educators who are currently suffering in a system that's very hard to work inside because they're trying to do it all. And now in Ontario, I think as of yesterday or whatever, there's a requirement now for, I might get this wrong because I didn't really listen to the whole announcement, but a technical education course, technological education course, every student
Mm,
has to take it. In grade nine, I'll have to check my
right.
facts.
Right.
I'll ask
Right.
uh, I'll ask
Those,
Siri in a minute.
right. Those have been in the past, though, eh? Those, we'll teach you how to type. We'll teach you how to, um,
Yeah.
it's,
Well, we
but
have to
I
remember
mean,
we had
so out
lots
of
of
context too, eh? Yeah.
yeah, well, we used to have tech ed. We used to have wood
Yeah.
shops, metal shops,
That's right.
home economics class and all that. They were all cut back
Yep.
in the late 90s. And I think that's when, and now everybody's scrambling to make trades workers. Well, why not?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We need
Well,
them.
it's a good career, and it's, you make some good cash, you get some great skills.
That's
Again,
right.
skill-based learning is like, going to university is not all that it was always put up to be. Like, this golden key you would get at the end of university, and all you'd
That's
have
right.
get ever you wanted. It's just not reality anymore. And you get, masters, PhDs, and you're still like, I got to do two
Yeah,
jobs. It's
I
like,
know.
it's an interesting world we live in, Peter. And I want to thank you for sharing some of your thoughts. These have been, we talked about tipping points, and you've kind of tipped my brain a little bit more, with the words that you shared today. So I really appreciate your words and your
Thank you.
experience, and your love for teaching and learning. Um, I know that your intent, and all of our intent as educators, is to get those kids to be the best that they can be, so that once they leave our classrooms, that they can go on to be productive, amazing citizens.
That's right.
And I
And
think
may I
that,
just speak to one more thing related
yes,
to
please,
being
please.
good citizens? Because there are a couple of projects that I have been particularly proud of being involved with. One is
Hmm.
run by Dr. Ruth Beatty at Lakehead University. She's been
Okay.
running a project for about 10 years, but got involved with us 4 years ago to do the coding aspect called Indigenous Ways of Knowing Mathematics. And
Yes.
so
Yes, I
there's a
remember
whole
that.
protocol around involving the community, the elders and the community members in doing this. But the kids basically learn from an indigenous artist how to do loom beading or Métis finger weaving or medallions.
Wow.
And they learn all the math associated with that. And there's incredible math. So those indigenous folks from years and years ago were incredible mathematicians, not Western mathematicians, but real
Right.
mathematicians.
Right. Yeah.
And then they code that in links.
Oh,
So
that's amazing.
lots of kids now are identifying as indigenous, whereas they didn't before because they were
Hmm.
embarrassed. So this is
Yes.
beautiful.
That's amazing. And
And
you've produced so much amazing work too, Peter, like through Code to Learn, your Links project too. I'm going to throw all of these projects in the descriptor of this podcast so that people have
Cool.
access to go and check it out. Lots of hands-on, lots of getting kids involved and getting them thinking. And I love this quote that I think it was Papert that said this, to where we want more of them involved and less of us. Get out of the way a little bit more.
He says it, and
Because
Gary Steger says it over and over
that's
again.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. Because we
for
often get
sure.
in the way of the learning.
Absolutely.
It's not in our intent. Where our intent is to, we want to help. We want that's our nature as teachers.
Yeah.
But it can be getting in the way at times of making that advancement happen.
Silence can be a gift. One I'm still struggling with.
Right. Well, this has been really fascinating, Peter. Thanks again so much, and I wish you all the best in 2024 and a good summer and on and on.
Thank you, and to you too, Chris. Appreciate it.